I'm Naledi Khabo, and on behalf of the Africa Tourism Association, I welcome you to the latest edition of The Exchange. The Exchange.Africa was created in the midst and in response to the circumstances around the COVID pandemic. In addition to serving as an online platform for information and connection, the Exchange also features a series of conversations that focus on Africa travel from various diverse perspectives. Today's conversation, The New Africa Story, is the first in a series of conversations and will focus on the perspective of Africa as a travel destination, how it's evolving, and how these stories are being told through diverse voices. Just as a bit of housekeeping, the session is being recorded and will be shared following. Please submit any questions you have through the Q&A utility or through the chat, and we'll get them to the moderator. And without further ado, I'll turn it over to Paula Franklin, co-founder of Franklin Bailey, who will be leading us through this media conversation. Paula, over to you.
Hello, good afternoon. As Naledi mentioned, my name is Paula Franklin. I have worked in the PR and branding space in Africa for close to 2 decades. I'm really excited for this talk. I'm excited to have some new conversations about Africa. And I'm sure, like most people watching here, in the past months, we've seen a real shift towards diversity, but I think even before that, we have seen a real shift in the types of travel stories coming out of Africa. So today we want to have a conversation about what those stories have been and how we see coverage of Africa changing in the coming years. So I will actually allow our panelists to introduce themselves and sort of go in order. Just tell us a little bit about yourself and your connection to the media. And Mimi, we'll start with you.
Hi everyone, my name is Mimi Aborowa. I'm Nigerian. I'm currently based in Lagos and I'm the founder of irin Journal. So irin Journal is an independent print magazine that explores African culture through travel, people, and community by focusing on a different African city for each issue.
Thank you. Kojo?
Hi, my name is Kojo Bentum-Williams and I'm a publisher and editor for Voyages, Afriq travel magazine and media. And what we do is that we write the narrative of Africa, and what we set out to do was to tell the stories in spite of our challenges, to tell some of the glowing stories that we can sell, to Africa. And again, I also act as a media specialist for the World Tourism Organization in Africa. So that's essentially writing and pushing the African narrative.
Nice, Alexander. Wait, you have to unmute.
Okay, thank you. Okay, I think I can't unmute unless the host unmutes me. But hi everybody, my name is Alexander-Julian. I am a Nigerian American. I'm based here in New York. A lot of my work basically surrounds kind of telling African stories through culture. Particularly, one of my favorite things to do is tell it through fashion. I'm a freelance journalist. Before I was freelancing, I worked for GQ. I did a plethora of things. I did a lot of writing and did a lot of like social content, and which is where I kind of like found out how I can tie together the things that I love about my culture and about Africa as a whole, and then kind of tie it in with travel and telling these stories and where they intersect.
Nice, thank you all for joining us. I think we would like to have this be a little more of a conversation. I know there's a bit of a delay because we're all on different continents, but I think we'll go ahead and dive in. I think we're going to start with talking about past coverage of Africa, which I think we all saw was mainly allocated to safari and wildlife travel. However, we are seeing more coverage of urban areas and cities. I'd like to know if you've also seen this shift and why you think this shift is now.
Also, I feel that it is, especially right now, it's something that is, obviously prominent, but I feel that this shift is something that we're benefiting off, like the fashion industry, the music industry, kind of slowly, tirelessly pushing Africa to the forefront. And now they've received, I would say, global visibility. And that's kind of shining a light on the continent. So more people are then now intrigued as to the continent of Africa, what's going on, what are people trying to say, what are people doing? And then I guess it should cascade into travel, because Irin Journal was founded in 2016, and at that time we didn't really have that many, I would say, platforms or print magazines that were talking about African stories. And comparing 2016 to now, it's really interesting to see that this is the moment, I would say, people are looking at Africa, people are looking into, there's a curiosity, there's that yearning for connection, people want to connect, what's going on, can I connect to my roots? Maybe I'm from there and I live in the diaspora. And these are the type of conversation I would say that are happening right now.
Someone has to unmute Alexander-Julian.
Yes. Okay, thank you. Yeah, I agree with Mimi. I think one of the things that will kind of like help this push is social. But I think for a long time, Africa was to the Western world. Africa was only what people here were told it was. I think now you have the ability to within a few clicks connect with somebody who's in Nigeria, who's in Ghana, who's in South Africa, or who's in Senegal, and see what they're doing and the things that they're interested in. And then I feel like that helps us tell these stories, because before it's okay, all we know is Safari, but now you can follow a Nigerian designer on Instagram and see the amazing things they're doing, and then people are more interested in finding out what else they're doing, what else they're about, or what other things are happening culturally. Because I think now the story is more about the culture of the destination rather than what the destination may offer you as a traveler. But I think more just about what you can learn from these people. And I think that there's a new need for connectivity within the world, and I think that's the direction that travels, particularly in Africa, in my opinion, is going in.
Okay, so if I may add, I think that Mimi and Alex had brilliantly touched on that. But again, to also see that we're beginning as a whole global community to progress from using technology, of course, that has put Africa in a much more pole position to be able to tell its own story. So you realize that unlike before, but also to begin from pure media ground zero, the media itself generally across bad story is always the big thing that we all chase sometimes. And often than not, you find out that the big media, the mainstream media, would want to pick up a story of farming, war, etc., predominantly from Africa, all right? But now, because of access again to technology, access to information is very crucial. And the fact that people are able to understand, even people in the diaspora understand the African narrative, we are able to connect wherever that we are. And that in itself does not only let us connect socially, but able to bring up the excellent stories and the good things happening, on the continent. So you go from, Ikeja to Bulawayo to Accra to Nairobi, people are doing different things, except to say that right now we have the power of internet. So people are able to, upscale. And if they want to take advantage of it, we can be able to tell our own story. So the story of Africa now is changing because people have access to information, both in Africa and Africans in the diaspora. So it affords us to be able to tell the story well. And then we can spin the positive because, we know what's happening in America, for example. And let me be provocative here, for example, that in the 4th of July celebration, you had over 30 deaths through gun violence, all right? That happened in the States. You may see it in a few of the threads of the main news media, but let it again happen in Maiduguri or, somewhere in Lamu. It's going to be a big case. But for now, because of the information and communication and the threats, people are being called out for, trying to put sometimes to be the excess of the news mainstream media. So what I think is that it's giving Africa the opportunity to be able to tell its own story.
Yeah.
Okay. And then at the same time, look, we know we're not perfect. We have a lot of problems, but we're looking at the Africa where now we are having an election, okay, where the incumbent can lose from the fact of, from the viewpoint that he's been asked by the court to be conducted again a year after. And these are all stories that portray who we are. It's not only about the fact that people are taking to walls and guns and cutlass and machete. So I believe that the African story, the new African story, is about the capabilities of Africa and what is it that we can do. But again, to connect with ourselves and be able to put the conversation there. It doesn't negate the viewpoint of trying to ensure that people are accountable, there is inclusion, all of that, but at least it gives us opportunity to have fair hearing or fairer hearing. That's what I can say for the beginning.
Let me piggyback on that one a little bit, and this might be a
Cool.
question for Mimi first, because of what you're writing about. What African cities do you think are going to be the most of interest in the next 2 years? I personally have a new love for Kigali. I've been a few times for a recurring conference, shopped way too much, just really kind of fell in love with this city. And I think you're still seeing coverage in the media of Rwanda. And if they talk about Kigali at all, it's the Genocide Museum. No one is talking about the fashion. So I'm sort of wanting to know from you, what do you think, what's next? Where are people going to be interested in going?
So I measure interest based on, I would say, audience appeal, accessibility, and then infrastructure. So in terms of audience appeal, so we can say, all right, for instance, Rwanda or Kigali Fashion Week, build a story surrounding that. There's loads of conversation, and then that would, I would say, pique interest. But then a city where something is going on and people are interested, but then how are you able to get there? Are they direct flights? Is it that you're going to have to fly to Europe before you can get there? That can be, I guess, a limit. Or the infrastructure. What's the transportation, accommodation? What are all those things? And how do they interplay? So when I really think about that, I feel, first of all, with the media, the onus is on us to build this audience appeal and to build these stories, to tell stories that show and showcase different sides of cities that maybe they're defined by a particular narrative, but that isn't the case. That isn't the only thing that's happening. And then we can also champion, we know, okay, this is what is happening in this place, and then we're championing it and driving, I would say, attention there. So for me, I would say I'm a bit biased because for our second issue, we're working on Addis Ababa, and I really feel because of ET and the powerhouse with, Ethiopia Airlines, it's accessible for people to go to. And I feel it's so rich culturally. And I feel that it hasn't fully been distilled. And I think that if you're connected to people who, I would say, they're knowledgeable and they're directing you and they're telling you, okay, this is what to do, this is what to see, this is the culture. Because when I think of travel also, what type of traveler are you? Are you looking to relax? Are you looking to understand places, understand the history, and then build these stories around? So I would say Addis. I was also speaking to a friend, just having conversation, and she traveled around West Africa by herself. And she expressed how Banjul in Gambia was amazing, that it was very, I would say, pro solo female traveling. And I just found that really, really interesting. She was the people were so warm. It was easy to get around. It was just a really relaxing place to be. And with that, I was just kind of looking more into the city, and I felt that would just be an interesting city to, highlight and to focus on and to direct attention and tell people about. In terms of fashion, I stumbled upon Casablanca Fashion Week. I didn't know about that as well. So exactly North Africa and their fashion, and I felt that, with Casablanca, what they're doing, it would also be interesting, because when you think of Morocco, you're thinking of Marrakesh. So think of Casablanca and then think about the fashion and the other things you can see with a city like that.
I have to agree with Paula. I think I will forever sing the praises of Rwanda. I literally love Kigali, and I tell people this all the time. I really think that they are going to be the next big travel destination in Africa. I feel like they're in the reasons why are because of some of the old stories that there are on Africa. They have safari, they have beautiful luxury resorts, and they are building an amazing art and fashion community. And I think one of the most powerful things about their community is that it's supported by the government, like not in total, but like they have government support, which I think is like so important, because I think what we've seen throughout, and I will often speak to fashion just because those are the things that like I'm always like on the look for, always on the lookout for. We've seen like brands and talents all over the continent build amazing platforms without any government help, and sometimes to the point where the government actually is detrimental to what they're doing, and they've thrived and been able to like make amazing platforms. But I think Kigali has done that, and it's continued to do that, and now has the government support. And I feel like with that and having a government that understands like different sources of revenue for a country is super important. I speak because like I also like have a very strong love for Nigeria, and I feel like we have immense talent. I feel like there's so much happening in Nigeria, but I feel like we may not have as much support from the government. And I feel like those are the reasons why we're not able to like, maybe, I don't know, that's a whole like separate topic, but yeah, I think Kigali and I think Rwanda and all, especially because of the fact that we have to talk about the genocide. Like 25 years ago, I think it's now 26 years ago, they just had the genocide, and they've completely turned that country around. And so it's like, if you can do that 25 years, what can you do for your tourist industry in the next like 5 years? Like, there's so much construction and there's so many things happening. The president is doing like amazing things for the country, like giving the citizens equity and in the industry. And I just think like those are things that are going to push a destination forward. I also really love Dakar. I think that there's a lot happening there on the art scene, and I feel like, and with culture being something that I believe is driving people to Africa, I feel like there being like such a budding art scene in Dakar, something else that's going to draw people there. You have like Kende Wiley, who opened his residency, Black artist residency or Black rock residency in Dakar, I think like last year or 2 years ago. And so I think those are things that are going to be driving like these cities and countries.
I agree. Kojo, where are we going next? What city?
Okay, so for me, let me digress a bit, because if you, I've done, I think 46 of South African countries. Now, Africa is a cocktail of the place to be, okay? And over and above, we've moved from a bit much more of a rural-based tourism to urban tourism, where you go to the cities of Africa and people come with a bit of least expectation and they want to come back again. So if you start from, say, Santa Maria in Cabo Verde, you're going to go to Kigali, or probably go to Mombasa, come to Accra, Lagos, even Abuja. Because if you compare Lagos and Abuja, it has two different spins. But I went to, Abuja, with my colleagues, and we like to go again. So Africa offers you the window for you to experience humanity, the world, and excitement. And if you know how we do things, Africa is always a destination that gives you a taste and wants you to come back again. So it'll be difficult for me to say, well, I would love to go next, because I've done most of them, but I would like to go to each of them again. Back here in my country, when we had the year of return, it was flooded with the tourists, people, all of that. And if you look at it, West Africa, we have the strength of cultural tourism. Ghana, Nigeria, Senegal, Mali, we have that. You go to East Africa, safari plus urban city vibes. You go to North Africa, they have the coast. The island, they have the coast. So for me, looking specifically, you have to define exactly what you want. And Africa offers you the opportunity to express yourself, not just by leisure, but you have the business, thing to it, that you go to, like you're saying about Kigali, amazing city, clean city. But then again, after Kigali, you may want to see the gorillas in Musanze. So in terms of what we want, and I can't say now exactly which country I want to go, because now we are locked down, and it's so depressing, to say the least. It's so depressing, and bizarre that we can't travel. But then again, and if you saw the SA2 tourist survey, it tells you that there's still the demand to travel. Okay, and Africa, what I can say for Africa is the fact that we have cocktail mixture of things that people get excited about, and depending on what you want, you can literally go on your bucket list, or on your calendar, and you're able to, if you want beach, you can have it. But what I want to wrap up to say is that Africa offers you an excitement no other destination gives you. Because, for example, the cultural thing back here, if you go to Lagos, not just Lagos, go to Abeokuta, go to all of that, come to Ghana, you see different dances, different stuff. In Mali, music, okay? And these are authentic music. You go to Khabo, you go to Ireland. So if you choose what you want, I bet you're gonna get that in Africa. Often the challenge has been the connectivity, and that's a bigger problem, okay? Connectivity and artificial barrier. So you have, for example, flying through and you wanting to go to, the hubs can connect you, say from Addis Ababa, from Nairobi or Kigali or OR Tambo, can connect you to all these cities. But over and above, you realize that in every city of Africa that you get to, there's something that you may want to stay more, unlike other cities. But I think that we're privileged and we are endowed to have these things, except to say that there are a bit of infrastructure challenges that do not allow even Africans themselves to appreciate. Because if you are in Mozambique, it's difficult for you to see what is in Lagos sometimes right now here. And before, even though there's a steady progress, but you still have to travel sometimes to go to the north to come down to connect back on the continent. So
I think that, because I do know I was hearing some conversations before COVID of increased flights within Africa, which I'm sure a lot of those plans have been pushed back. But I do hope that, sort of in the next 2 or 3 years that you can fly from Dakar to Johannesburg without stopping.
No, that's some of them are beginning to take shape, because, for example, if you look at Air Senegal, okay, they're beginning to open up, and they got their new aircrafts and all of that. They begin to open up. Now, before, for me to go to Cabo Verde, I need to go to Lisbon to connect to Cabo Verde. Right now, I can go to Lagos, and they are trying to fly here. So we have to have an interline agreement with our airlines. And COVID, unfortunately, has put a lot of airlines in a very precarious position financially. So I don't know what I saw in the news. Kenya Airways is in trouble. Air Mauritius literally is gone. South Africa is just, on the thread. So I hope as well. If we can have, because, tourism, the experience of tourism comes in synergy. And so if we put these things together, that's where we can be able to optimize, upscale, and then people on in the continent can be able to see the value, the power of tourism.
I agree. And sort of on that note, I want to move on to diversity, which I think is probably a concern for everyone here. And the last 6 weeks, I think is now getting some serious global attention. And before Black Lives Matter, I would say that most coverage out of Africa was Americans and Europeans going in, mostly on safari and covering Africa stories for mainstream publications. And I think now we are looking at more diaspora travelers. I think we're also looking at more local tourism. I think a lot of these, whether it be lodges or city hotels, actually have residency rates. And I think they're now expanding on these residency rates. So you will have Kenyans, able to go into the Mara, Tanzanians able to go into the Serengeti. So in that light, do you think, one, that Africans will take advantage of this and sort of do these more traditionally Western vacations? And what could this mean for diversity going forward?
I think it's important for people on the continent to explore their countries and their cities. I would hope that they do take advantage of these rates, and I hope that these establishments continue to push these rates, because I always feel weird, especially coming from America, to go to Nigeria or go wherever I'm going on the continent, and knowing that I'm having these experiences that people locally aren't able to have. And so I feel like it's important, because then what that does, that also pushes pride in the country. And I feel like I always feel like every time start talking about something deeper, I feel like something that I noticed with some of my people in Nigeria, and I'm sure can happen elsewhere in Africa, is that we have like a tendency to kind of wait for Western like approval before we start to support something. And I feel like if people on the continent are able to truly see the beauty of the continent without the white gaze or without Western approval, then they can partake these experiences and then tell the stories like themselves. Like, so it doesn't have to be, you don't have to fly me in from New York to come see the gorillas in Rwanda. I can talk to somebody who lives in Rwanda and who has seen them plenty of times, because there's our resident rates that they can partake in these kind of activities. So I feel like that's really important. I'd hope that people would take advantage of them, and I hope that people are continuing to push these things, to push those residency rates.
Definitely, like I completely agree. I think it would make the idea of travel more inclusive, because these travel stories or these experiences, coupled with white gaze, it is, a white traveler that is coming to Africa and they're telling these stories and they're telling people about these experiences. First of all, if you're on the continent or you're from a particular, I would say, country, maybe you know about it and you take it for granted. So sometimes when you have, I would say, the creatives or the content curators who are experiencing this, and they're then documenting it and showing you, okay, this is possible, this is accessible, this is what it's like, and then it could pique a level of interest. And also with, to piggyback on what Kojo mentioned, December last year, there was a mass exodus of Nigerians either to Ghana or Cabo Verde, and it was because of the launch of the direct flights from Lagos to Cape Verde. Also, I think maybe it's visa on arrival. Because it was new, the prices were decent. So what it showed me was that we have an eager travel market, but most people just need to be shown how. Because when it comes to African travel, especially when it comes to the safari, it feels polarizing. It feels like, okay, how do you do it? So there's this knowledge gap, ideally. So when people are, filling the gap and informing and educating, explaining, showing that it's possible, I feel that people would want to take advantage of these rates and want to explore themselves. It shouldn't be, a friend that's in, Paris or something that's coming to Rwanda and telling me about it, and then I would like to go. So it's just to encourage more people to travel. There's so much to see. It is possible, in as much as there are challenges. I compare a city like Mumbai to Lagos in terms of energy, in terms of like hustle, even I would say exactly. So find people from all over the world. You go to India, you go to Mumbai. It might not be as accessible, but you do it. It's part of the adventure. But no one is going to think to come to an African city and kind of figure it out. It's just immediately like, whoa, no, I can't do this. How do you, literally like, I can't do this. How do I do it? So I think most people just need to get it out of their mind that travel in Africa, it is possible. It's not impossible. You can do it. People would direct, explain, and just be willing to get stuck in and to discover, because similar to what Kojo said, there is so much beauty, so much culture, so much history, so much to explore, and so much untapped areas that are just, sitting there and gathering dust, So yeah, that's what I think.
You think, Kojo, just give you a question for you as well, that tourism companies will adjust for the local market? I think one example, Giraffe Manor got a little bit of pushback for some local rates they had published, but the one woman who posted made a good point that a Giraffe Manor rate, if you want to go just for lunch, includes an airport transfer and a transfer back to your hotel. So clearly, if you're from Nairobi, you don't need this. So you need a basic adjustment of, if someone has their own car, of just going and being able to, book a reservation like most of us would. Do we think that the travel industry will make a long-term adjustment for, and I wouldn't say just local, for, people coming from within Africa?
I think that if you look at what the industry now we're going through, and of course unprecedented times, as you've seen that, the supply chain beginning to make some investment. Now, the multi-million question that you have to ask yourself is that if it's for a longer term, are we, the travelers of the domestic tourism market that we are talking about, of course, begin from domestic, regional, international, that in spite of the situation right now and looking to lead recovery, do the operators have the time to be able to give other rates that which is sustainable? Because, for example, now they have to be contending with additional things like health measures, PPEs, etc., which is going to come at cost. So you ask yourself, who's going to pay for the cost? Again, we were already having challenges, with respect to how competitive our rates are. Like she said, when Cabo Verde Airlines launched from Lagos to Santa Maria in Cabo Verde, people were going. I mean, that was a good way to connect. But again, if you come right now to the situation, what all of us are saying, that we have to come to a very strategic conclusion to agree that it has to be a situation that, because suppliers like the accommodation, sector and the government or something may have to come out with a bit of incentivized packages that would allow people to go. Because if Kenya Airways, South African Airways, even Ethiopia as the big boy, cannot guarantee in terms of sustainability on the model that they want to do the pricing, then it's going to be a challenge. And the fact that we have destination that literally domestic tourism don't exist, that's the thing. Now we're asking them to change here to be able to lead the recovery for the local. So I think that, yeah, we are, even for that, we're looking for, in terms of product change, because some of the products, and you ask somebody, you can go to Dubai, really, they go to Dubai, do shopping, essentially do shopping, okay? That's the thing, as opposed to go to Costa del Sol or, Mallorca or something like that. Now, if you compare the offering that the traveler, not just being African, but anyone else who would like to go to a place that will get value for money, is going to pick that, i.e. flights, etc. And then just flying from, OR Tambo to St. George, or leaving maybe somewhere from Port Harcourt to something, and I don't know the cost, which is not competitive, then people are encouraged more to look towards flying outside. And so if we put our energies and try to work together, especially from the African point of view, and also from the policy point of view, we are able to break the artificial barriers. As I speak to you now, if you come to Ghana or you are in Lagos, you want to see Accra, it's a big challenge trying to use the borders. From Accra to Abidjan, it's also a challenge. So these things do not help for us to travel. You spend hours at the borders trying to cross from Accra to Benin or Accra to Lome or from the other sector. So if we can fix all these, I think that the African is not what we used to be per perception. Again, people would like to travel, and people have grown, in terms of the spend and where they would like to go. But they would like to be treated on an equal basis, to say that if I have an option that is going to take me to Sao Tome, or take me to Paris, or take me to Venice, is the price competitive enough for me to go there and experience, as opposed to very, want for better with a bit of draconian way that price that is not interesting for you to go. So we may have to look at how operators, tourism boards, and then people in the travel chain can work together to be able to sell. Because I think that as media practitioners, we also owe it as a duty, honestly, to be able to promote and showcase the thing. Because all the things you see are all man-made. Come on, look, we're going to Paris. What made Paris? People putting PC, and some of the things are artificially made, by large, many of them. So if we can be able to spin the positives that we have, look, the nightlife in the Ikeja or in Nairobi, or in Santa Maria or something, is amazing, even back in Accra. And you've seen gradually a big surge in terms of urban tourism, even in Africa. So you see people come for conferences and they like to stay more, and they have conferences and they spend more, because we've just gone beyond just going to leisure. And then there's a whole conversation about either you want to go for the leisure market or you want to go for the mines or meetings market. So I think that if we create avenues that makes it encouraging and makes it attractive for Africans to spend. They want to go for holidays. Remember that about our nature. Sometimes we want to visit, family and friends. And because, let me make this last point again, because there's a leakage every time in terms of tourism data, we often than not tend to switch some of the wins and the gains of tourism into trade. Why do we have shopping tourism? It happens. People travel primarily to go and shop and go back. And when somebody travels to a country and he gets into the duty free, he's spending. But when the National Statistics Agency is calculating, they calculate that as trade or as something else, as opposed to you coming in and specifically going for that. So if we can put all this, get a data set right, I think the African, if he has the exposure and we can, also by the power of media, expose them to exactly what's happening in the continents, they are willing to spend, but again, it has to be competitive.
And sort of, we can talk a little bit about the Black travel movement. So now I'm mainly meeting the diaspora. Alexander-Julian and I, we both live in New York. There's been a lot of conversations in media about diversifying and having more diverse voices. And I think there's definitely not a lot of inclusion in mainstream media, but if you look at a lot of Black travel accounts, a lot of Black travel influencers, there's a huge market out there. I personally took my first trip to Ghana last year and went with tastemakers on a day trip to the slave castles, which I won't recommend doing that in a day, but I met a lot of Black travelers on the way, and every person I talked to was there because of their sorority group, a church group, or because they found a tour operator on Instagram. Nobody had read about this in a newspaper or a magazine. And I think that's sort of a really key point, because clearly we're getting our information from somewhere and we are traveling. So I would love to hear a bit more about how you think that, ATA members, travel people in general, can market to the diaspora, both through the mainstream media, because I do think that is important, but also through our own channels in this movement that has been going on for years.
Man, I always lead with like these statistics that I read on like the Mandela research a while ago. I think they've been updated now. I read it a while ago, but it was about I think African Americans spend, 60 billion on travel. 60 billion, right? 60 billion on travel, and they're marketed like 3% of all basically marketing. They're marketed to 3% of all like travel marketing, but somehow we still find a way to travel and explore these different cultures in different places, and which I think is like so frustrating because. We've been taught all our lives is that money talks, but I guess it doesn't reach to our extent. But nevertheless, I think what we have to realize is we have to get creative. One of my favorite travel initiatives that I've seen was which also I now have more problems with because basically with the whole 23andMe and this whole lineage research that a lot of African Americans or just diaspora Africans are partaking in, where they submit their DNA to find out their roots and stuff like that, which I think is problematic in a sense. But there was a marketing plan where I think they were I don't know if it was 23andMe or what the other Ancestry.com did, where basically they invited people to come and obviously try to find out their roots, and then they selected a few people to take them back to where they were from, which is I think was something that was super impactful, and was breaking. I think one way to use this is to realize that all over the world Black people are treated less than, and what comes from that is a mental thing. It's okay, if I'm not welcome here, where in the world am I welcome? And the only answer for that to a Black American or to somebody who is Black and lives in America or lives elsewhere or lives in France or lives in Europe is that the one place you're welcome, the one place you're welcome is where you're from, and where we're from is Africa. And so when you realize that these people are looking for a place, and even me, my whole family has like gone back to Nigeria often, but it's so important to me to be able to have that and be able to call that place home, because I know here it's hard for me to call America home, because I know, day by day I'm being treated like a way that I'm not into. And so I like when we realize that we can create a space where people can feel welcomed and feel like and have a sense of like belonging. I feel like that's a way, and if we can create initiatives based on that, then you'll start to see more and more people coming from all over the world, more and more Black people coming from all over the world to Africa. And I feel like that's some of the most important tourism there is, and for me personally, because I kind of often straddle that line of like, I have a very African identity, but I also have a very Black identity too. And so I think it's important. I think I'm rambling and saying the same things over and over again, but I think it is important for us to create a space where we feel like we can invite people in the diaspora to come and experience Africa for themselves, because if we don't, we'll leave it to the people who have experienced Africa only through the white gaze and have a view and ideal that they have of the continent that we, love and cherish.
Right, and I'm gonna go to audience or watcher questions in a minute, but Mimi, I know you, as someone who's sort of creating a space, for Black travelers, African travelers with others, how do you see navigating, who your audience is and what kind of messages you're able to get out?
So like I mentioned before, so the journal was kind of born out of frustration and the fact that when it came to travel or travel related content, everyone was talking about everywhere else but Africa. And then I'm sending messages to all of these different publications, and I'm telling them, you should focus on this city, you should focus on that city. And the response was, okay, eventually. And it got to a time where I was just like, I'm just going to create my own space. And in creating that space, what I would say I found out is that, first of all, we are getting, I would say, feedback from people in the diaspora. So that idea of connection, like, okay, I'm from Lagos and this is what the history is like. This is what is going on there. I didn't know. Then in terms of like Asia, it's curiosity. So they don't really know anything that's going on here. And it's like, oh, wow, this is this city and this is the energy of this city. And they're really curious. And with, I would say, European travelers, they travel far and wide. So it's just the idea of, representation. This is this new publication and, promoting diversity in terms of travel. So what I think is that we just need to encourage travel is also in as much as it's that, connection and it's something leisurely, I would say, it's also a business. And we encourage, the tourism boards to not think of promoting Africa to, Westerners. Think of promoting Africa to more travelers. Like, for instance, I would say with Lagos, we have a very eager travel market. Focus on these different areas of people that are interested in traveling. And then also just take it seriously and actually care and do the work, And then the travelers themselves, put yourself forward. I guess with Black Lives Matter and the diversity conversations, there's a scramble for content and people are looking to see, okay, what's going on? How can we talk about it? So this is the opportunity for you to say, okay, this is the experience that I've gone on and I would like to write about it. Don't only look to, the Condé Nast or the big publications. Also look to smaller ones and want to grow and build with them, because most people are looking for visibility, and visibility is coming from, the Western publications, but also grow and support those on ground that are trying to do this thing as well. So let's all talk about travel stories. Let there be diverse, different people having the different conversations. So it's not just one platform that's talking about one place and talking to a specific person. There are so many, like for instance, the Black American travelers, even travelers in Africa, the different cities, the different experiences, apart from heritage tourism or safari tourism, there could be tourism for nightlife. If someone wants to sit down and package Lagos, exactly. If someone wants to sit down and package Lagos as a city for like turn up and that type of experience, it can be done, and it would draw people. When you think of like, it's important to know how cities are defined and how we register it. Someone probably has never gone to Las Vegas, never gone to America, but when you think of Las Vegas, you think of Sin City, you think of gambling. There are these ties.
Of course.
There are these experiences that you just think of. So we have to do the work and show that for Lagos can be that nightlife experience. Or for another city, it could be, because I'm really passionate about food and the culture of food. And when it comes to African food, I feel we don't really explore it as much culturally. Like the West African cuisine hasn't been defined. And I'm really passionate about that. There are cities that if we really want to distill and focus, you can define it in terms of food and create an experience, food and culture tours. I'd find that even in Lagos, young guys and young girls, they're doing their own tours of the Brazilian quarters. A friend of mine, he does walkabouts of the Brazilian quarters. And it's not something that the tourism agency in Nigeria, well, if they are, I don't know, are really like promoting. It's people on their own that are taking it upon themselves. And just take it upon yourself, try, and hopefully with time, you can create that space and people will begin to see what you're doing and see what's going on.
Right. I also want to tag, sorry, just really quick. I definitely agree with what Mimi said about like empowering smaller brands and not just looking to like the Condé Nast travelers and travel leisures, because, trying to get them to tell our stories can be a battle. I mean, even with something as amazing as like Ghana's Year of Return, I pitched that to a larger magazine and literally like got ignored over and over and over again. And it wasn't even like I was requesting them to send me. I was already going. There's no way I was gonna miss it. I was already gonna be there. I already was on the ground, had connections, blase. It was just like, give me a platform to write this or to do something. And I got ignored. And when I got ignored, I was like, okay, whatever, it's fine. I just assumed that they've already, because I was like, there's no way they're not writing about this. And I was like, I trust that they have like some sort of amazing coverage. And that's the reason why I didn't get a response. And I come back February, March, January, April, nothing. And I'm like, so you mean to tell me this brand that claims to be the voice of the travel industry somehow completely didn't find it important to write about one of the biggest travel initiatives I've ever seen.
I think it speaks a lot to the Black trip, because I also was pushing that story because I went. The articles that did come out, very few, were in December. But the whole year, Ghana's tourism numbers skyrocketed. So you can only imagine how much larger that would have been.
Right.
And covered it in February, March. But I want to get to a few audience questions. I feel bad that we haven't. So if we can maybe get to these quickly, because there are a few on here. So the first one is, how can individual countries or even regions of Africa differentiate their culture and experiences more effectively in global markets? Which I think is actually a really interesting idea. If we can, regional tourism. Can you go to South Africa, Botswana, Zimbabwe, or, So how differentiate themselves?
What again? I'm just coming. What the situation now in East Africa right now is that if you go to the East African Tourism Platform and the EAC visa, it allows you 3 or 4 countries. With $100, you can tour all the countries, right? Again, back to West Africa, that we've had the challenges, the challenge of that. So we've not able to, implement and, ensure that not just, West Africans, but people to our continent can be able to have the latitude to move around. But if you look at the SADC region and East Africa, there've been some progress where you can be able to do tours between South Africa to Botswana, Zambia to Zimbabwe, cross country. driving there. And so there's always that opportunity that people can be able to travel to explore what we have. But just to touch on what Mimi said, people talk about Las Vegas, what's happening. But the onus also is on us for us to be able to highlight. If you go to Samaki in Dar es Salaam, in Tanzania, okay? I don't know if any of you knows that Dar es Salaam offers you some of the exciting things to do in East Africa or in Africa in terms of urban city life. We all don't know. People don't even know what is Dar es Salaam. Come on, people know London, then don't know what is down here. So as we try, and some of the African destination and tourism boards have the privilege of working with them, they have been engaged. South Africa, for example, gets 70% of their travel markets from Africa. And so they begin to get that. I mean, don't get us wrong. Tourism is a global business. And so you look at where your strength is, and then you can put your money, do the road shows, do the exhibitions, travel shows, and people can be able to come to your destination. But again, you look at the low-hanging fruits. And if you look at Paris, if you look at Madrid, if you look at Europe by and large, it's about regional tourism. Leaving Madrid, driving from Madrid to Paris, it takes you 8 hours or something. You can drive and come. Or leaving London to France with Eurostar, you're connected. So we come to the infrastructure and the fact that once people know, because remember that people these days, unlike before, which I know some of the things are a bit pilgrimage or spiritual encouragement to take a trip sometimes, or the visitor friend, family, you realize that people think about the economic factors, which has always defined the motivation of trip. It's not the sole motivator, but it's one of the key motivators. That you know that you can do a trip that take you to a destination, and now if you may even want to cross-check destinations in the world, and also in Africa, is about experiences, not just the tangibles or the hardcore tangibles. So I'm thinking that
we have to go through some of these audience questions. Sorry to cut you off, but I think this is kind of an important one as well. In all these conversations, what is the role of the youth in promoting Africa? We've seemed to have left them behind in most of these engagements. I'm assuming youth means under 25, 30. Where do we see this, this population going, apart from backpackers to Cape Town?
I think the youth are so important. I think they are so important. I think the youth are, again, my whole thing is culture. I love talking about the culture of Africa and the culture of African countries and African cities. And I think the youth are the people that are driving the culture. The youth are and kind of to everything I've talked about before, how I talked about like how I think social media is the thing that's connecting us all. It's the youth that are showing the things that are happening on the continent through social media. It's the youth that are the artists, that are the designers, that are the models, that are the dancers, that are all the things that people now see about Africa. About it's more than about lions and tigers and whatever. It's the things that the youth are showing us. So it's like you see like all these like dances. I mean, this small things, but you see all these dances that are like going viral on the internet, and people are just like, oh, well, that's something that I know now about African culture. You see like all these fashion designers that all the magazines are talking about. They are all young African designers. You see the music. I mean, like the whole Afrobeats movement, it's being pushed by young Africans. And so I feel like the youth are very important. And I wish and hope that the governments will support the youth a little bit better. But I feel like, I just wish they would support them a little bit better. And I feel like that they are the future. The children are the future. The youth are the future.
What do you think?
No, I definitely agree. I think they are the ones that are pushing out the culture. Like when I think about the youth, I think there's another Nigerian magazine, and it's pretty much youth culture. It's called Native.
I love Native, and I love irin.
And they've done so much. And same with what Alexander said. It's like the government are slow to catch on. And I feel that if they're open especially like the government and the tourism boards together, if they're open to having these people kind of imbibe their energy into what is currently being provided, it would make such a huge difference. Most, not all, because I would say some cities there, it's more fully fledged. But for some other cities where like the tourism board and it's not as formed, I feel that they will benefit from insight, benefit from new perspectives, new line of thoughts. And I really think that this is where, the youth can come and just, youth just sounds so good. But yeah, it's where they can just come on board and just, give off the energy and just really change things, change it from how it is currently.
Yeah, and I agree. I think I'm also agree it's sort of awkward to say youth because I'm not sure where I fit anymore, but probably not the youth. So this is one more sort of question from our group. In your different experiences, how important do you find it to switch up or offer different products for domestic and regional travel? Something that's not safari. For Kenyans, we might want to push a party scene or a forest getaway.
If you look at, I don't think that it's right now and how industry is going now. That's why for African destinations, again, the tourism boards and the governments, in as much as they have the challenges, which we know already, they've consistently moved from the situation. And if you speak to South Africa, speak to even Ghana, if you speak to other countries, they tell you that the traveler's needs has changed, which is moved from the experience as opposed to tangibles. So you get somebody flying from New York who come from year of return, and you would like to enjoy, the vibe in the city, in Osu or in Accra, and not necessarily going to the pilgrimage in Cape Coast. These are segments of tourism that people like to enjoy. So if you look at how destinations in terms of the DMOs are positioning themselves, they are trying to offer services that will appeal to the indigenes, as well as inbound tourism. So you don't necessarily just see that you are coming to Nairobi. Yeah, you may, but remember that people can be in Kenya and they've not been to the Nairobi National Park before in the city, in Nairobi. And then people have not been to Masai Mara. So it's about, beginning to show, essentially we're going back to how we started about what the country has to offer in terms of different types of activities. But to see that obviously what you have for domestic tourism or the domestic market is different from what will be your core. Because ultimately, the National Tourism Board has a responsibility of promoting the country for its people, and then looking at how they can get a spend, because people decide to target specific markets. Sometimes with the statistics, with the data, that tells you that you have a destination that they are looking for a specific thing. It may not all the time be the case that you're having a universal kind of tourist, but you have different type that, depending on how they want to progress, and they have short to medium term, they're able to say that, for example, Ghana for a long time, the US was the biggest market, and Ghana for a long time has been the home of the diaspora. And so when they launched the year of return last year and all of that, it kind of picked up naturally. That's what it is, because remember that it was the first sub-Saharan African to gain an independence. And so it was a vibe that it will resonate, with the people. So I believe that countries and destinations, but again, we have to ascribe the reasons to the fact that if it's not competitive in terms of pricing, I'm sorry, these things will be there, but it cannot be enjoyed by the locals or the indigenes.
Agreed. So I have a final question for each of you, about storytelling. I would say each of you are a storyteller thing in the media, and I would love to hear what untold story from the continent you would like to tell.
Alex, you start?
Go for it.
I go for it?
Yeah, go for it.
Okay, let me wrap. So For me, I think that if you look at Africa now and what's happening, there are a lot of things happening right now. So the untold story is about the African excellence that's happening in all spheres of our lives. That you were able to tell this story. As I speak to you now, yesterday I spoke to a young man from Harare who has put up something amazing, and Google wanted to launch this thing. So when we tell these exceptional and unique stories of Africans doing these things, in itself might not sound to be pushing what we're talking now, but these are propellers that will inadvertently, spare the growth of the larger African renaissance. So I think that my story is to pick up on the other things, the artists, the music, the culture, the poets. People don't talk about this, and this. Our culture, your culture is a way of life, and how sweet can you talk about a continent and how their people are living, even with the addition of digital tools to be able to tell a unique story. So I'm looking to tell stories of people from all walks of life in our continent to be able to say that Africa is ready and Africa is not what we used to see in the media.
I think personally, I'm excited to tell about the story of artists as well, artists in Africa. I think, but not there. There are a lot of artists, photographers, painters, designers that get a lot of fame outward facing on the continent. Outside of the continent, which I think is amazing. But I think there's so much. I feel like art and style are so embedded in the DNA of Africa, and I feel like that's kind of the story that I want to tell. There's something that I kind of did on a very micro scale. I think I had done in Nigeria. We have Okadas, which is like the little motorbikes, and the driver. I personally believe are some of the flyest guys in Nigeria. I just think they'll be dressed. Some of them are just very cool. Some are just very regularly, but they are always wearing the most extravagant and wild sunglasses. And I'm just in working in fashion in America, I see a lot of very simple things that I consider simple because of my Nigerian background, because I'm used to color. I'm used to there's an extravagance that comes with being Nigerian. I'm used to it, but it's such an absurd idea here. And so I just wanted to tell the story of people who people on the continent who who exude what it means to be African and be in the arts without having that Western approval. Even the guys in the market that are always selling paintings that you just always oh cool, this is a nice painting. You don't realize that these guys are actually sitting painting these things for hours on end, and it's real talent. You have all these young kids that you may see on Instagram or that are sitting there drawing these insane portraits by pen, and they do this every day, and it's something that nobody will ever find. I think there's even a viral video going around about there's some boy he's in Lagos also, and he's doing ballet, and everybody's oh my god, I wish we could send him to Juilliard and this and that. I'm just well, I'm sure he's in a great dancing school in Nigeria. Let's tell that story there rather than yanking him out of where he's at and what he's doing, and whatever. I just there's so much talent, and it's so embedded in the culture, and the arts aren't necessarily always pushed within our culture, and I would like to be able to push those arts, I think, is what I'm trying to say.
Nice. Mimi? Oh, wait. You
got it, Mimi.
Yeah. So first of all, what we do, because with our journal, we kind of split it into the past and the present. I feel that as Africans, it's really important to have an understanding of our past and where we came from. Unless you are, I guess, really passionate and really into history and archival information, then you'd research it. So I feel that we should tell the stories of how we became. And it doesn't have to be anything so deep. It doesn't necessarily have to be slavery or all of those type of conversations, but just people and people that are institutions themselves and are integral parts of the city, and how they were able to create, and how they were able to just make something of themselves. There's so many people that we could profile and learn more about their stories that haven't really been publicized on a global scale. And then also I think it's really important to see, okay, yes, we know the past, everybody's always talking about the past, but also to look into the now. These are the different people, these are the different things that are happening, these are the creatives, this is what they're creating. And I think when it comes to creating as an African, or creating, for instance, in Nigeria, so many things are stacked up against you that you would take for granted being in the West. So it's really important to highlight these people that have achieved despite everything that's, you know, going on. People that have created, like for instance with the fashion industry, it's such a struggle. So when you see designers that have crossed that threshold, it's a really, really big feat. There's so many things that they had to overcome. So I think it's really important to, you know, talk about the process, talk about the journey. It's okay, you see an artist or a designer, you're talking about that person, but there's a lot to learn about how it became and what they had to do to get to where they are right now. And I also, like I'm biased, I love food. And food culture is just very, very important. Like for instance, there's this very, very popular stew, it's called ofada. And someone told me, I think, that there is an area somewhere in southwest Nigeria that is called ofada. I'm not 100% sure, but I was doing my research. And I feel that it would be really interesting to go to that place and understand, you know, it's the agriculture or the way that they made the dishes, you know, because when it comes to African food, you think of, you know, old women that are just there cooking with their pots, with the wood, and they're making these dishes. And when it comes to, like I said, like African food, our dishes are hearty. Rice and stew, you can't go wrong with rice and stew. It's one of those things that just give you, it's comfort food. And I feel that in as much as it's comfort food and it doesn't seem glamorous, you can also promote it.
But what's glamorous? It's about a spin.
Exactly, which I was actually going to backtrack and say that who defines what glamorous is? Who defines what dishes should look like? You know? So let's talk about these stories. Let's talk about our history. Let's talk about the different things that make us unique and make Africans who we are. And just talk about pride as well.
I think just to really piggyback off something Mimi said earlier, we were talking about like how, you know, you have these people who like have made it to Western acclaim and they've like passed that threshold despite everything they've been through. I think one of the things that I always love to like push is like, even when I'm like highlighting an artist or a designer or somebody on the content, I'm always like, this person is great, but I want you all to realize that this talent isn't one-off. There are a billion people in Africa who have this talent and maybe even greater, who don't have this platform, who I haven't come across and haven't been able to write a story about, or who you haven't had the chance to like find in the media somehow. Like there's so much talent there. I just want people to like realize that. I think that you know, not everybody is able to cross that threshold, but the talent is still there and still permeating throughout from north to south.
It's totally true.
Look, Paula, if I may just use some 5 seconds of your time, just to add to the fact that I concur with Mimi and Alex, and what is in Africa, everything in Africa is in abundance, okay? And I think that we have to also be able to have confidence in our people. Because a lot of times, and it's not only me saying it, but I know a lot of friends, we pitch for works and you don't get it, it's not necessarily because you're African, but because just by your African themselves cannot validate. But it's all psychological issues. And we know that it's an thing that is made up because of perception and made up from the big media. So what I'm saying is that African themselves, we are able to tell the story of our people to our people. You know we live in a globalized world, which is fine, and we come to a big stage and ascertain which people are who are the best, etc. But we don't have to leave it too late for somebody living in Madrid or living in New York to say that Alex is good or Mimi is good in Lagos before we begin to give respect. In my opinion, I think that we have to build that kind of build that support
Right.
for our people, and then we'll be able to move on and then take it to the next level.
Very
Thank
true.
you.
We totally agree. Those are some great last words. I'm going to say thank you on behalf of the ATA.
It's all right.
This is a whole series actually of kind of, there's talks going on through November, but we are going to do a few more media talks talking about this Africa story. So we hope that everybody will come back and join. And if you look in the chat, there'll be some more details on further talks. So thank you.